Welcome to the Smarter Money Life podcast hosted by Andy Mattingly. Frequent guest on local TV news, regular segment on Indy Now TV, and a leader here at Forum Credit Union. Forum's mission is to help members lead their financial dreams, and in today's podcast, we're going to cover a topic that will help you improve your financial life. Is your child ready for college and you're not really sure how you're going to pay for it? Are you concerned that your child will have too much student loan debt upon graduation? Hi, I'm Andy Mattingly, and I'm back here with you today to talk about a very important topic to a lot of parents. So we're going to break down some of the myths and some of the facts about paying for college. And the great thing is I have someone here with me today who has 3 young kids who are a lot closer to college than she really wants to admit. It's one of our marketing professionals, Courtney Keeler. So Courtney, thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me, Andy.
Well, I think you're going to provide a lot of insight and I hope a lot of comfort to some of our listeners out there. But then also you may have some questions that we can talk about that they will be thinking about as well. So I want to kind of start first with is, what's your biggest worry about college for your kids? And I don't mean about once they're in college, I mean about getting through college.
Right. My biggest concern would definitely be the potential debt that they could each come out with and just that first start in life, not wanting them to feel crippled by that debt. And then on a more personal note, my kids are pretty close in age. So at one point in time, all 3 will be in college at the same time. So that also concerns me a bit for that particular year in the future.
That's those are a lot of fears rolled up in right there. But knowing you, I know you're thinking a lot about that. And I think that's good because you're thinking about those things now. And none of your kids are teenagers. So you do have some time. And I was only teasing that it's maybe closer than you want it to be. And just remember, I've told you before, at some point you can't wait for them to leave to go to college. Right. So let's just start first with, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but have you been planning to help them pay for college, or what's your current situation that you're trying to accomplish?
My husband and I both definitely would like to help them pay for college. We were fortunate enough that our parents helped us pay for college, and just being able to start debt-free once you graduate was just such an incredible blessing, and I think just really set us up for so much success. And so it is definitely one of our goals to help each of them pay.
So we'll get into this a little bit more, but one of the things is to think about is planning for college isn't just paying for it, right? Mm-hmm. Part of planning for college is to kind of prep your kids for scholarships. Now, a lot of people want to think about athletic scholarships, but there are a lot of more scholarships that your kids can get if you focus on things like some of the STEM or other types of scholarships, that'll be plentiful. So have you guys thought about that, or, what would you like to be doing with those areas?
Yeah, I haven't thought a ton about scholarships. Only one in particular. Our middle son is pretty strong, and I thought recently, well, wouldn't it be nice if we got him into shot put and some sort of niche sport where he could really excel and just throw something really far and get a scholarship there? But in reality, no, I have not thought too much about scholarships. We have focused on the 529 plan that's offered through Indiana College Choice, and we set up 3 of those. So it's been our goal to try to contribute to that each year, but yes. I am realizing that we should probably be contributing more than we are.
Well, we'll just go right to that. Do you know how most people pay for college? What's your thought before we started talking about this? Mm-hmm. How did you think most people paid for college?
Maybe through a combo of like savings and loans and even like home equity loans. I think maybe my parents did a small home equity loan to help with mine.
Yeah, and that's good because I think there's a myth out there that everyone but you has all of the money saved in a 529 plan for their kids to go to school. And there is a lot of options. So you've brought up a lot of good ones. So you started saving some in a 529 plan, which has the great tax benefits that you can get. But then, some people just also pay for college out of their current income stream. Instead of contributing to 529 anymore, they're now paying for college. So they take it out of that. Home equity loans. But then you also have to look at some student loans and some parent student loans. I think those are always good things to look at. And then you also have to think about, there might be some work study programs, things like that. And then I do want to come back to scholarships. If your kids are very active, and it's not just about active in sports, but if you can get them very active in a lot of different things, there's a lot of scholarships out there. I mean, there are 7 people every year that would tell you that, wow, I'm so glad they were involved in a lot of things. And I reference 7 because that's the number of form scholarships that we give out. So those are, I think, things that you have a good handle on. And I want to make sure our listeners know you're not going to have it all in a 529 plan, most likely. I mean, a few people do. I think the statistic is less than 20% of the people have all of the funds saved in a 529 plan by the time their kids go to school.
That's good to hear.
So,
that's reassuring because it definitely seems daunting.
Well, it does, especially when you're going to have 3 in school at the same time. So, and then wait until one of them decides, especially if your oldest one goes to a 5-year school, it'll be a little bit longer.
Yeah, there you go. That's another thing to consider.
So have you thought about ways that you might try to lower the cost of attending school? And I guess what I'm talking about that is, have you set expectations for your child about what's the process going to be in your family about choosing which school they go to? What's going to be the criteria?
So far, we haven't been extremely specific, but we have mentioned regularly in-state school would be a very good choice because tuition costs are lower, and that would probably be the avenue we would encourage. But, if one of them were to get an out-of-state scholarship, that would certainly make that a more doable option.
I think those are good things. And I think that's one of the things that parents have to really talk to their kids about, especially today because of the cost of schools, is that you can say, hey, you can look at any school that you want, but then we've got to sit down and walk through the decision process of what is it going to be to get a school. So let's say that you have one of your children wants to be an engineer. And so there's an in-state school that has a great engineering program. There's a private school that has an engineering program, and there's one that's in another state that's, has an engineering program. Well, they can get into all 3 of them, and then it's like, well, what can they get out of school? Like, do they have good placement rates?
That's a good point.
And then the other thing is, and this is one of the things when you start thinking about loans, especially if it's going to be loans that your kids take, you don't want it to be more than 10% of their net pay when they get out of school. Right?
Yeah.
For that loan payment, because so you got to look and make sure that they don't have $350,000 worth of student loans for a job that's only going to pay $35,000 a year, right?
That's scary.
Right? So it's like, well, maybe we can do the same thing here. And I think it's one of the most difficult things for parents, especially those that are have kids of your age, and that you were still probably able to pick a school and kind of go where you wanted and you didn't get into a lot of debt. But that's different now. And so if they want to go to those reach schools early on, that's when you say, oh, okay, then we need to be really good in some of these other classes. That's why homework's important and getting good grades.
Can I ask you a question of your thoughts on something?
Yes.
We've heard before that sometimes parents will have their children pay 5 to 10% a year of their cost to have some skin in the game. So even though we might want to pay for the majority, just to kind of force them to do what they can to hold up their end of the bargain so that it also helps them to be responsible for their education. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's very good. And I think it can take a couple of forms. I know with my 3 kids, we told them they could go to any school they wanted, but what we were going to pay for was in-state tuition value. Anything above that was for them. So you needed to save if you wanted to go somewhere else, or you're going to need to work during that time and pay for it. Surprisingly, they all 3 chose options where they didn't have to put any extra money in.
Smart kids.
That was our agreement with them. Now, they were responsible for everything above the basic food and room and board. So like we gave them a flat amount. And so like if they wanted to be in the nicer apartment, well, that was up to them to pay the extra. So I do really think it's important for kids to have a little bit of skin in the game instead of parents paying for everything, because then there's a little bit more focus on it and it's a little bit better decision, especially when you start sitting down with them and saying, here's what you can reasonably make when you're out of school, and you want to buy that brand new car when you graduate. Well, it's going to cost this much. And you say you want to live here, it's going to cost this much. This is this is what you can do in student loans, and you can get it here at this school, or you can get it at that school and be in debt. Where do you want to be? And
I like that.
I think that's, important, even so much today, is for parents to talk about those things with kids. And I think, one of the things that you also talked about there, is having kids have skin in the game. Another way they can do it is to do a work study.
Okay,
Or, some of those things. And I know those are more difficult to get and you maybe don't always get it, but you can get jobs at school and work and still go. And I mean, a lot of people I know do this when their kids go on to graduate school. Like they may get some stipend to be in graduate school, but it doesn't cover enough, and their kids start working part-time, not full-time. So I think those are
too.
A very good experience. It's a very good experience. So you talked a little bit about this, but have you been talking to any of your kids yet about paying for college? I know they're a little bit younger, but have you talked to them about like the cost of college and how they might have to pay for it and those things? Have you started talking about that yet?
A little bit, probably more in general terms. And we emphasize the importance of saving and how you want to save for the really big things in life, like getting a car, going to college, buying your first home. So one of the things that we've done since they were really little is we always do a save, spend, share mindset. So in that regard, let's say they get $25 for their birthday. We make sure that we go to the credit union and we have them deposit a certain amount for savings. And then we usually have them go to Target or whatever store they choose, and they can purchase a little something. And then the share part of that, they usually donate a portion of it to our church as well, to just remember that giving is important as well. So I hope that kind of through these lessons, as they're growing, they'll understand the importance of keeping all those in balance, but also saving for the really big things.
I think that's excellent, because I think if you want kids to make good decisions about what they're going to do in college and even their college choice, if they don't have the basics of that financial knowledge and money-making decisions, how can they make a decision as it relates to college? They won't have any concept of that and where money comes from and where it goes and how you need to use it. So I think that's great. And I think that's one of the things that as parents that are listening to this, regardless of the age of your kids, is just making sure that you're involving them in the decision-making process and making sure you're sharing everything with them. And I think sometimes kids even that are 17 or 18 can think that parents have everything and they can pay for college because they don't really understand what college costs and all of those things. So I think the more you involve them in that. I want to come back to something because I think it's great that you're working with, 529 plans. What are the things that you like about the 529 plan? Just you as a user of it.
I love seeing that the investment grows on its own, for sure, that it's not extra money I'm putting in, but that just seeing that return on investment each year is really nice, and knowing what we started with versus what we are with, 7 years later now. So I've enjoyed that, and it's been really easy just making a quick transfer from one account to another to make that happen. And then I love the tax benefit. I love how you can get a state income tax credit when you are making contributions to the 529. That's always helpful.
Yeah, and that's good. And there's a couple other things that you probably won't have experienced yet, but you will when your kids get older. One of the great things is the flexibility in the beneficiary.
Okay.
So let's say that your oldest child gets a full ride scholarship somewhere. So you have all those funds and you're like, well, what am I going to do with that? You can immediately transfer it to next child.
Oh, that's really
and
nice.
right into their account and go on. And then if he gets it, you can change it to the third child. And then, if for some reason all three of your kids get full rides, you can save that and then change the beneficiary to your grandchildren.
Oh, I had no idea.
So there's a lot
really
of flexibility with that. And then the other thing is, making your contributions. You can continue to make contributions even after they get into school.
Oh.
So that you can use those funds. So let's say you have enough funds for the first 2 years, but you don't have enough for the following 2 years. Well, you can keep making that in. It doesn't stop when they start college. So it's great that you can do that because you get the tax benefit, and then when you need it, it's coming out. Now, the investment won't grow as much because it's age-based. And once they turn 18, they get very conservative because no one wants to open up their 529 and see that it tanked right when they think they need it. So that's the other great thing about 529s. The way they're invested is that once they are in the college years, it's going to stay pretty conservative so that you're not going to have a big fluctuation, and you can pretty much count on what you're going to have
that's
there
good to know.
as much as you know. Because right now you've probably seen some ups and downs, but that's that's a good thing. And I think the other thing is, and you just mentioned it, it's easy to open and it's easy to maintain. And you can, as long as you live in Indiana and you're using the 529 Indiana plan, you get that tax deduction. So I think that's great. So open-ended here now. What other things or what other myths have you heard about, paying for college or you have concerns about? And maybe we've covered them all, which is fine.
Sometimes I think it's you don't know what you don't know. And so I do think that there will be things that I run into over the next several years where I will have more questions and then I will know exactly who to come to.
Well, I appreciate that vote of confidence. I will say a couple of things for parents who have kids that are closer to going to school. You're going to start looking for scholarships and applying for those things. And remember, the big thing is getting your child to get in those applications, to get into schools, to meet those deadlines. People that are starting next year, it's probably a little late for that. But if you have a child that's going to start school in the fall of 25, they're going to need to soon, when applications open up this summer, you want them to get applied, you want them to get accepted, because once you get in the school, there's a lot of scholarships you can apply for straight from the school. That's the only way you can be is to be, an admitted type of student. And that can really make a lot of decisions. I know with all of my kids, having them all in the schools they wanted to go to, it allowed them to make a significant decision on how much money they were going to get from each school so they would know where to go. So always encourage parents. They don't have to finally decide where they're going, but they need to apply everywhere. Because if you apply too late, then you may miss out on those scholarships, because sometimes they're giving out scholarship money, 1st of January, 1st of February. And if you wait to apply late and all that, you've missed out on all of that. So I think that's one thing I would tell parents. Be very careful using scholarship services because they're not all legitimate. We're in the day and age of there's a lot of things out there. So you want to be very careful with that.
That's a good point.
And a lot of the college counselors at all of the high schools and that, they are a great resource for those types of things. And so I always say that you want to make sure you're talking to them as well. And that's the other thing is I think sometimes you don't realize that whoever the recruiter is for the schools that your kids want to go to that are local, make a connection with them because they really want to get kids to come to their school and they'll help you, go through that process versus just reaching out to the school and calling that office. You have an advocate right here for most schools wherever you live. And so that's who you want to kind of connect with.
That's great.
So, and I think, the biggest thing about parents that, whatever age your kid is, just make sure that you don't get paralyzed by it and don't make a decision. If you want your child to go to college and they want to go to college, just look at all the sources and you'll be surprised how you can make it happen if you just look at all of those options. So I hope today we've covered some of those myths and some of those half-truths about paying for college. This has been another episode of the Smarter Money Life podcast powered by Forum Credit Union. Please leave your thoughts in the comments and be sure to look for our next episode wherever you get your podcast. Remember, now is a great time to make a difference in your financial life. Until next time.